The nakshatras are asterisms, which is defined as a pattern or cluster of stars smaller than a constellation. Therefore, we can look up into the sky at night and see what nakshatras the moon and planets are currently in. The nakshatras provide the most accurate form of observational astrology because even if you use the sidereal zodiac, you'll notice the constellations are not all equal 30 degrees in length. Constellations are never the same thing as signs, no matter which zodiac you use. Join me, Julene Packer-Lewis, on a guided tour through the 27 nakshatras with the moon's July 2013 ingress into each one. I'll point out the fixed stars the moon will pass while in each nakshatra. You can find my monthly nakshatra ephemeris on my website, www.yogicastrology.com. It includes the date and time that all the planets entered a new nakshatra, so you can use it to reference the current night sky each month. On July 1st at 6:11 a.m., the moon enters the nakshatra Ashwini, which begins at 0 degrees of Aries in the sidereal zodiac. Now, obviously at 6:11 a.m., the sun would be out and would be rising and the sky would be bright. So I have darkened the sky so we can see the stars for the nakshatras. Now you'll notice that the moon is in the constellation Pisces. This is what I was saying about constellations not being the same as signs. Pisces is a very long constellation that spans well over 30 degrees, and Aries is a rather skinny one. The fixed star that is associated with Ashwini is Sheraton in the head of Aries, the ram. The moon, as she covers her 13 degrees and 20-minute span of the nakshatra, will pass by the star of Sheraton. So you know when you look up in the sky, if a planet is near the end of Pisces and passing Sheraton, the constellation Pisces and passing Sheraton, that it is in the sidereal sign of Aries and it is in the nakshatra of Ashwini. On July 2nd at 8:10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, these times are Eastern Daylight Time. These maps are set for Cleveland, Ohio. On July 2nd at 8:10 a.m. the moon enters the second nakshatra, Barney. Now, Barney is associated with several stars. You'll see here that it has passed up Sheraton. It is out of Ashwini because it has passed Sheraton. It is now going to come and pass Hamal in Aries. It is going to pass Almach above in Andromeda and Menkar below in Cetus. So that area of the sky that spans for Hamal, Almach, and Menkar is the location of the nakshatra Barney. The moon enters the third nakshatra, Kritika, on July 3rd at 10:40 a.m. Now, we're going to notice that the moon has left the area of Hamal, Almach, and Menkar. And the stars that are associated with Kritika are the Pleiades. If you read the article at my website about the mythology of the nakshatras, you will always remember that Kritika is associated with the Pleiades. That is the star cluster at the bottom of Taurus. The moon enters the fourth nakshatra, Rohini, on July 4th at 1:32 p.m. You'll notice that the moon is past the Pleiades because the moon is out of Kritika, and during her trek through Rohini, the moon will pass by Aldebaran, the alpha star of Taurus. The moon enters the fifth nakshatra, Mrigashira, on July 5th at 4:35 p.m. So you will notice the moon is past Aldebaran, having passed that star in the prior nakshatra of Rohini. Now, there are no stars in Taurus during Mrigashira, so the constellation below is used. Bellatrix of Orion, which is the right shoulder, is the one that is associated with the nakshatra of Mrigashira. The moon enters Ardra on July 6th at 7:40 p.m. You'll notice that she is past Bellatrix of Orion's left shoulder that belonged to the prior nakshatra, and is about to pass Betelgeuse, Orion's right shoulder. Betelgeuse is the star that is associated with the nakshatra Ardra. Also, while in Ardra, the moon will pass by the feet of Gemini, with the brightest star there being Alhina. You can see in this photo that the planet Jupiter is also in the nakshatra Ardra at this time. The moon enters the 7th nakshatra, Pranarvasu, on July 7th at 10:41 p.m. You'll notice this is the constellation of the new moon because the sun is there above, and obviously I've darkened the sky. I've also had to remove the horizon because these planets are below the horizon at 10 p.m. at night. Obviously the sun isn't out, so I've removed the horizon from this image. Also, while we're here, let me point out that Mars is between Bellatrix and Betelgeuse, so you know that Mars is actually in the nakshatra of Mrigashira at this time. Jupiter has passed Bellatrix, and is nearing the feet of Alhina here, so Jupiter is in Ardra, the prior constellation that the moon was in when she also passed through that area. Now, Pranarvasu is going to have the moon passing Pollux and Castor, which are the heads of the Gemini twins. Mercury is also in Pranarvasu at this time. The moon enters the 8th nakshatra, Pusha, on July 9th at 1:33 a.m. You'll see that the moon has moved past Pollux and Castor of Gemini, which belonged to the prior constellation of Pranarvasu. While the moon is in Pusha, she will pass by North and South Acellus of Cancer. The moon enters the 9th nakshatra, Aslesha, on July 10th at 4:11 a.m. Now, Aslesha is associated with the ring of stars in the head of Hydra, and also Alfred, which is the star below, the bright star below that's marked in the image in Hydra. You'll see Alfred. So the moon is going to pass by there while in Aslesha. Venus is here between the ring of stars and Hydra's head and Alphard, so that's letting us know that Venus is currently in Aslesha on July 10th. The moon enters the sidereal sign of Leo and the nakshatra of Magha on July 11th at 6:32 a.m. Now you'll notice that I haven't mentioned any of the other sidereal sign ingresses since Leo. This is because the nakshatras are all 13 degrees and 20 minutes in length. So starting at 0 Aries and adding 13 degrees and 20 minutes, you'll find that the nakshatra will carry over from one sign to the next. And 1320 adds up to 120 degrees is when it comes out evenly back at 0 again. So all of the fire signs will begin at 0 for the nakshatras. This gives a threefold rhythm of the nakshatras with Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic energy, and it gives a whole different overlay of inner development, social development, transpersonal development, however you want to look at that. So we are beginning now the second set of 9 nakshatras as the moon enters the fire sign of Leo which begins the nakshatra of Magha. Now, Magha is associated with Regulus, so during this 13 and 20 degrees of movement, the moon will pass by Regulus. On July 12th at 8:33 a.m., the moon enters the 11th nakshatra, Purva Bhadrapada. Now, Purva Bhadrapada is associated with Zazma, which is the star on the back of Leo the lion. You'll see that the moon has passed by Regulus. She did that while in Magha, and is now going to pass by Zazma while in Purva Bhadrapada. On July 13th at 10:08 a.m., the moon enters Uttara Ashada. Now, the moon was in a really funny place, so I had to really turn the sky to show you this. So all these constellations that you see on the right side of this image are actually southern constellations, and I have the Zodiac band going here on the left. At any rate, the moon, while in Uttara Ashada, is going to pass by Denobula, which is the tail star of the lion. On July 14th at 11:14 a.m., the moon enters the 13th nakshatra, Hasta. And how interesting that I hear the crows outside my window at this time. Hasta is associated with the star of Algorab in Corvus the Crow. Now, Algorab is a dimmer star that isn't showing up here on the picture, but there's a star right under that O of Corvus the Crow. And what that is kind of the hand, because Hasta's the hand, the healing hand. So it's that, like the hand of the Virgin, of Virgo. Also, the moon will pass by a star in the middle of Virgo called Purima as it goes through the nakshatra Hasta. On July 15th at 11:46 a.m., the moon enters the 14th nakshatra, Chitra. Chitra is associated with the fixed star Spica, which is the brightest star in Virgo. So the moon will be crossing over Spica while in the nakshatra of Chitra. On July 16th at 11:40 a.m., the moon will enter the nakshatra Swati. You'll see that the moon then is near the planet Saturn, which is also in the nakshatra Swati. The fixed stars associated with Swati is actually Arcturus in Boots. The stars at the bottom of Virgo are rather dim, especially compared to Spica, which is one of the brightest stars in the sky. So Arcturus is above and slightly left of the moon. It's in the constellation Boots. And as the moon passes underneath Boots along the ecliptic, that is the travel through the nakshatra of Swati. On July 17th at 10:55 a.m., the moon will enter the 16th nakshatra of Vishaka. Now, Vishaka is associated with Zubin El-Ganubi and Zubin Eshmali of Libra. You'll see that right here at the beginning of the nakshatra, the moon is actually covering, which would be an occultation, Zubin El-Ganubi, and so we cannot see it. But you can see the scale star of Zubin Eshmali above and to the left. So the moon will be passing Zubin Eshmali as she goes through the nakshatra Vishaka. On July 18th at 9:32 a.m., the moon will enter the nakshatra Anuradha. Now, Anuradha is associated with the star Ascidius. You'll see that it does not say Ascidius here on the sky map. Ascidius is the same star as Dishchaba. And also in that area is Grapheus right above. The moon's kind of covering the word. We just see the graph. So those two stars are what is associated with the nakshatra Anuradha. You'll see that the moon has passed Zubin-Shmali. The moon will not get to Antares because that is associated with the next nakshatra. So these two stars in the head of the scorpion, Ascidius and Grapheus, are the ones that are associated with Anuradha. On July 19th at 7:34 a.m., the moon enters the nakshatra Jyeshta. This is the last nakshatra of the water signs before going into Sagittarius. The fixed star associated with Jyeshta is Antares, which is the alpha star of Scorpio and the heart of the scorpion. So the moon will pass by Antares and through the body of the Scorpio while in Jyeshta. On July 20th at 5:08 a.m., the moon enters the sidereal sign of Sagittarius and the nakshatra of Mula. Mula is associated with two stars at the tail of the scorpion and also with the foot of Ophiuchus that dips down into the ecliptic right above the tail of the scorpion. Now those two stars are Shala and Lasath. Lasath is the smaller one at the very end of the tail that represents the stinger. Even though its name is not showing up here, that is where it is. So as the moon passes the foot of Ophiuchus and the tail of the scorpion, it is in the constellation Mula. This is also, or in the nakshatra Mula, this is also the nakshatra of the galactic center. On July 21st at 2:22 a.m., the moon is actually above the horizon, and we have the horizon back in our photo again. So the moon will be entering the 20th nakshatra, Purva Ashada, at that time, July 21st, 2:22 a.m. The stars associated with Purva Ashada are the bow stars of Cos Borealis and Cos Australis. On July 21st, later in the day, at 11:26 p.m., the moon will enter the 21st nakshatra of Uttara Ashada. So you'll see she's past the bow stars of Purva Ashada and also past Nunki. This is the area of the sky where there really isn't any stars to speak of along the ecliptic. So there is no zodiacal stars that correspond with Uttara Ashada. So what is used is way above the star Vega of the constellation Lyra. Now, Lyra or Lyra was Orpheus's harp that could lull the wildest of beasts. Now the moon actually gets right under Lyra. If we were to be able, right under Vega, if we could take Vega and superimpose it down onto the ecliptic, the moon would pass it during the last pada, which is 3 degrees and 20 minutes, of Uttara Ashada, and during the first ghati, which is 53 minutes and 20 seconds of Capricorn. So during that time, there is actually a 28th nakshatra called Abhijit that is also associated with Vega, but it's with the moon's more exact position to Vega. And it is the star of ultimate victory, used in muhurta, which is electional astrology mostly. So at any rate, the moon here in this picture is passing through the area of sky between Sagittarius and Capricorn, where there are no fixed stars to speak of, and that is Uttara Ashada. On July 22nd at 8:32 p.m., the moon enters the 22nd nakshatra of Shravana. Now that one begins just at or after the fixed star Dubai in Capricorn. And the one that it is going to pass during its duration in Shravana is Altair of Aquila the Eagle, which is just above and slightly left, because the moon is going to go under and pass Aquila. Now, I'm going to go back to this 28th Nakshatra Abhijit here, because it extended, remember, from the very last pada of Uttara Ashada and into the first 53 minutes and 20 seconds of Shravana. So you can see here that the moon is directly under Vega of Lyra. And if you drew a line straight down, you'd see that that's the left side of the moon there underneath. So in about another 53 minutes of celestial longitude, not of clock time, the moon would be past Vega. So that gives you an idea of how this star is tied into not only the prior nakshatra of Uttara Ashada, but also that the moon's or any planet's passage directly under it spans for that length of the zodiac, because that is the length of the time that it takes the moon to begin and finish passing underneath Vega. On July 23rd, the moon enters the 23rd nakshatra, Denis, at 5:50 p.m. Now, the fixed stars associated with Danista is Saddle Suit of Aquarius. It is the left shoulder of Aquarius, the water bearer. I had to tip this screen again so that I could get the constellations and the moon in the right place at this time on this day. So even though it appears that the moon is still underneath of Vega, it is really not, because I don't have the ecliptic straight this time. Okay, just so you know. Anyway, we are on Denista, and the moon is going to pass by Saddle Suit of Aquarius. On July 24th at 3:33 p.m., the moon enters the 24th nakshatra, Beshock. Now, so you see that it has passed up Saddle Suit of the prior nakshatra, Denista. And you can see now that I have the ecliptic fairly straight again, that this is well beyond Vega. So during the duration of the moon's travel through Beshock, there aren't really any bright stars in Aquarius. They're there, but they're not, you know, bright enough to be seen unless you are in a really dark area. So the star that is used here to mark this nakshatra is Formahalt, which is in a constellation below the ecliptic called Pisces Austrinius. So we will be watching for the moon to pass by Formahalt while in Beshock. On July 25th at 1:50 p.m., the moon enters the 25th nakshatra, Purva Bhadrapada. You'll see that it has passed up Formahalt of the prior nakshatra. And again, we are entering an area where there aren't any stars in the zodiacal band at this point. So what is used to mark Purva Bhadrapada is Markab and Sheet in the constellation Pegasus. So while the moon is transversing through Purva Bhadrapada, she will pass Markab and Sheet of the constellation Pegasus just above the ecliptic. On July 26th at 12:52 p.m., the moon enters the 26th nakshatra, Uttara Bhadrapada. So Uttara Bhadrapada is contained within the sidereal sign of Pisces. You'll see that the moon's starting out here kind of in the midst of the ring of one of the fish's heads. The star that is used to mark the passage through Uttara Bhadrapada is Alganeb in Pegasus. Pisces is a very dim constellation. So again, we are looking to Pegasus for this nakshatra as well. On July 27th at 12:43 p.m., the moon enters Rabbity, which is the last nakshatra, before we begin again with Ashwini. So you can see that the moon is past the tip of the wing of Pegasus, which was Alganib, and it is past the ring of stars that represents one of the two fishes' heads whose tails are tied together over here in Pisces. So as the moon travels through here, it's again a very, very dim area of the sky. There really aren't any bright stars in Pisces at all. So stars that are associated with this constellation becomes Alfred, which is Eta Pisces, which is how it's showing up here on the sky map as Eta Pisces. Its other name is Alfred, and that is sort of the end of the nakshatra. So it's right past, well, you know, we can't really see that it's much past anything, but once it hits there, once it hits Alfred, we are real close to beginning Ashwini. Okay, but Alfred is associated with Rabbity. It's the star that goes with Rabbity. On July 28th at 1:25 p.m., the moon enters the sidereal sign of Aries and the nakshatra Ashwini. Now, you'll see here that, remember, Ashwini has to do with Sheraton. So the moon is going to pass by Sheraton in the head of Aries. And we are starting it here right around the area of Alfred. It has just passed Alfred. It's a little bit left of Alfred. And now it has entered into the nakshatra domain of Ashwini. On July 29th at 2:56 p.m., the moon will enter the second nakshatra, Barney, again. So the moon has passed Sheraton, which belonged to Ashwini, and it is going to pass between Menkar below in the constellation Cetus and Almach above in the constellation of Andromeda. On July 30th at 5:08 p.m., the moon will enter Kritika again, and you see that it is past Menkar and Almach, which belonged to Barney, and Kritika is associated with the Pleiades, which is the cluster of 7 sisters here in the beginning of Taurus. And an interesting tidbit, the 7 sisters are the 7 wives of the 7 rishis, which are the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. And we come to the end of the month with July 31st, where the moon will enter the nakshatra Rohini at 7:51 p.m. Rohini is associated with Aldebaran. You'll see she has passed the Pleiades and is going to pass Aldebaran while in Rohini. Thank you for joining me on the guided tour of the nakshatras in the night sky, and often the daytime sky darkened so that we could see the stars. I hope that this gets you excited about looking up at the sky and noticing the stars and the planets and moon as they travel through the nakshatras. And remember that even when this month of July is over, you can always, including now, go to my website, www.yogikastrology.com, and right in the sidebar you will see a link for the nakshatra calendar. So the current month's calendar will be there. So anytime you are outside and you think you see a planet, or you think a planet's in a certain nakshatra, you can grab that calendar and you can check it out and see that you're right. So I hope you enjoyed the tour. Thank you for sticking with me through the duration. Namaste.